All right, everybody. I hope you had a chance to get refreshments you needed to get. Um, Stretch a little and do whatever it is you needed to do. Even if you wanted to answer those questions or do the writing from the current events, that was cool. Like I said, the reason I posted this early is so you have a few days to get it done before the required uh, due date, which is close of business on the day of class. And that's like 11:59. So I mean, you've got some time. All right, let's jump right in, right, with the usual screen thing. So I'm going to be kind of jumping in and out, a little bit of a continuation from our last. Let's get rid of this. Oh, my bad. Sorry. All right. So if we're looking here, give me a minute. Be quiet. All right. This kind of goes with the with what Aristotle had thought and some of the other philosophers. He uses the word philosophy, right? He makes point of it, uh, separating the two, right? Science and philosophy. Galileo is clearly a scientist. Philosophy is theory. It's fact. I can't say it's not fact because it's some of it is based in observation, right? You're making this philosophical assessment. Doesn't just come from nowhere. There is thought. Maybe it's something you observe. But to make it concrete, to make it mathematic, you have to have real observation backed up with, and for the most part, backed up with math to prove whatever theory it is you want to prove. Galileo took the steps to observe. He did the math beyond what was standard, and really, if it wasn't really for Galileo and those scientists that really took the time to put pen to paper and think through some of these theories to conclusion, we'd be possibly stuck at a different time. Although you can't say all things for a reason, but life is played out the way life is played out. Um, the moon absolutely isn't a pearl, like the ancient philosophers thought. The moon has a rich topography of fissures and valleys and volcanoes and craters everywhere. It is a beautiful and delightful sight to behold the body of the moon. No doubt, right? And he looked at the moon differently than most people because he used, he was the father of the telescope. Everybody has to be the mother or the father of something. So that was one of Galileo's claims to fame, amongst others. If you could see the Earth illuminated when you were in a place as dark as night, it would look to you more splendid than the moon. I'm going to give this one to him and then some because he's making the connection between these two objects. He understands that what we're seeing is another perfectly round object, but in this case, it's orbiting around us as opposed to having the solar system orbit around us, right? This is our orbiting body, and we and the moon are orbiting around the sun, and that's what gives the phases of the moon, or the ability to see the different phases. So he's visualizing, knowing, understanding the mechanics of our solar system, how things work. He knows that what we see, phases of the moon and the beauty of the moon, is from our perspective, and that's what makes the moon look so beautiful. He can only imagine what the perspective would be on the moon, and compliments to the Apollo astronauts. I don't know. I wish I knew exactly what Apollo. This was pre lunar landing, right? And this is a doctored photo. This photo is, the moon is way more beautiful than the original. The original is called Moon. I mean, the Earth is more beautiful than the original. The original is called Moonrise. It's not that it's grainy, but it doesn't have this clarity, this digital clarity to it. But the pre lunar lander astronauts, because there's a series of guys, they had to go around the moon, make sure, remember all those steps before you can actually do the objective, many objectives before you get to the eventual goal. They took this shot. So Galileo was spot on, right? Could you just imagine seeing a crescent Earth, or in this case, I believe we're looking at a gibbous Earth. So it's on its way to becoming It depends if it's waxing or waning, becoming smaller or bigger. But anyway, nonetheless, it would be a breathtaking sight to be on any one of these moons to these planets. If you get these phases, right? And to be on a moon and be able to look back at your own planet, humbling, I would say, would be a lackluster way to describe the set of emotions that must run through you. This is another one, and this is a fuzzy shot, but this is Apollo 17, and I wish I could remember the name of the astronaut. My apologies, but what makes this so special is this is the first shot taken with the Earth and an astronaut. Right, so this is you get sort of the trifecta with the American flag, an astronaut, and the Earth in the background. I know this could be staged. I mean, the moon maybe is behind him a little bit, maybe a hill or something. I understand, but we're going to go off NASA records on this and say if the three things aligned perfectly for one of these shots, so it's not too bad. And you can see actually what I always love about these early Apollo shots, always in the reflection. Right, whoever the astronaut is that took the shot. Right, the sun's back here. Here's the astronaut. Here's his shadow. Super cool. One thing you would notice when you are on your way or observing the moon is that the shadow, the rise, the waxing, waning shadows are different. They are the reciprocal of one another. So when you're staring at it, right. So if you were on the moon, if you're the Earth and you're observing at the moon, and you're getting yourself an almost full moon, right? This is almost full. It's just 3/4 gibbous, whatever you want to call this one. Waxing, right, getting bigger. You'd have this shadowed crescent, the same thing, 3/4, almost to a new moon getting small, or new Earth, I guess you'd call it, right? That means when the shadow fully covers it and there's no Earth. So. That would be just as beautiful, right? Flipping the script a little bit, depending on where you are and what you're looking at. But I can only imagine a crescent Earth. And indeed, I would feel greedy to say I wish we had more moons, but I sometimes do, because you look at the other planets, right? Saturn and Jupiter are really pushing the envelope, right? Saturn is the king of the satellite, the lunar objects, its moons. Jupiter is just a few off. They both have a specific number, and those numbers are set, but they're kind of waiting to have some other moons certified as moons, and if that's the case, I think it will take Saturn into the lead with 80 plus, 82, 83, and Jupiter at 70 and change. So, but still, I mean, these are little tiny ones. They have those super big moons that are beautiful. Jupiter's got those 4 Jovians: Io, Europa, Ganymede, Callisto. Saturn has Titan to it, which is unbelievable. Enceladus, which is another one on there, almost looks like the Death Star from Star Wars. It's got a super cool crater on it. So these things all are beautiful, but even Mars has 2, right? Those Phobos and Deimos, those 2 little potato-like moons that circle around the planet. But our moon is quite spectacular, and the relationship between our moon and planet Earth is pivotal. It's what allows us to be. I'm not sure if it is the end-all and be-all for the reason there's life on this planet, but it is the end-all and be-all for how this planet move, the structure of this planet, the way the tides ebb and flow, the speed of the planet, the wobble of the planet. It keeps us our revolution around ourselves from wobbling too much. So there is a essential component to having the moon as our neighbor. Look, not that we're filling these things in, but I mean, just because you have the paper out, and obviously if you look at the notes, which you should have out, by the way, right? The father, if you don't pause this and get your notes out, I should have said it in the beginning. Father of modern rocketry is really where the notes kick. This is just sort of a warm up to it, little Galileo intro and the moon rise, Earth rise. But this is something to think about, right? Our understanding of the moon was made possible by what 2 human advances? You know this. What 2 human advances allowed us to appreciate the moon? I mean, I wish I could. You were in class and you'd raise your hand. Sometimes it's the same headers in a class, and the hands go up, right? And I always appreciate when someone answers a question. But the same souls are always answering. They either feel comfortable, and I know a lot of you know this stuff, feel comfortable, and you throw out the info right away. Then those others who are sort of kind of in the background, don't have a chance. I always want to hear more answers, or see more faces answer as well, right? So this maybe gives some you guys a chance at home to think for a quick second, be like, oh, if I were in class, I would have thought the answer to be the two things that have changed the way we do business with the moon. One is the telescope, right away. I mean, I said it before when I talk about Galileo, Newton. These guys really change the way we interact with celestial objects. It's no longer a look up and try and guess, those 5 unaided naked eye planets, or wondering what's, how the stars are interacting. Once these things became more powerful, right? Look at us now. We got one parked in between the Earth and the Sun, just staring off into infinity. Hopefully by summertime, we'll produce some amazing images. Anyway, the telescope, of course, is one. Thank you for those dudes. And hey, I'm sorry, I'm switching my legs. Sitting on it. You sit on your leg too long, and then just go. It's just a mistake unfolding it, or either way, numb. So we look up at the screen, and then this isn't history. These are more modern rockets on here than like the old ones of history or antiquity, but. And rocketry goes back a while. The study of rocketry really goes back to the 20s. Like, what? How could that even be a thing? Jet engines were a thing, but rocketry was, and propulsion was, and the burning of these fuels. People understood. Look, you fill a pouch, a sack, a something with gas, and you light it, and if you have an opening, that pouch, that sack will go in the direction opposite of that opening. The force of the combustion will push it forward. So you use that same theory. Instead of having a pouch or a bag or whatever, you have these giant canisters, and bring in the world of rocketry. And there's way more to it than that, but you get it. From small to big, and there's a few classics up here. Look, we were talking about the stuff before in the current events. I was talking about that Falcon Heavy. This is what went up and took the AX-1 mission, those 4 guys just recently. This is really what SpaceX uses, this Falcon Heavy, and this Crew Dragon capsule sits on top. And this is what was docking at the International Space Station. This is the rocket here. It's the Falcon 9 Solo. The Heavy is these extra 2 boosters. These are the dudes that land these 2 rockets, these 2 boosters at least. They land on the platform. Either they have a land-based one, or they'll have these barges out at sea, and they land fins back down. So always impressive and beautiful to see. And then this is the one here, Starship. Follow my little guy. This is the one that's going to go for Artemis Starship. This is Elon Musk. He won the bid for that. Remember, I said that Bezos is suing because it gives Musk the monopoly on lunar landing, which NASA's trying to figure out a way to incorporate everybody: Musk, Bezos, even Boeing, some of the private airline companies. So you got to keep competition rich. Otherwise, if it becomes monopolies, Bezos does, as from the mouth of the billionaire, right, who cornered the market in delivering products. He's crying foul on colonizing, or at least getting to the moon. Anyway, this is the Saturn V. This is the one that what do you call it? That goes, where are we? This is the one that goes to went to the moon. And then I think this SLS block. This is the ship that they're going to send to drop the supplies off. This is the one that they're doing the wet and dry run. This is the guy that was on top of the launch pad during the test that the lightning bolt hit. And this Starship Super Heavy, this is the one that's going to go to, or the goal is to go to Mars, right? These guys are like people ones. The deal is this SLS will take people to the moon and do like crude, drop off rough, what do you call it? I'm sorry, like lunar bases, we'll call it. This ship is designed to be the lunar base. Like there's a whole network upstairs in this thing, like 6 floors where astronauts, not that it'll simulate some kind of gravity, but astronauts will have sleeping quarters. It'll be different than the usual, like lunar lander pod. This is, they'll take off, that kind of thing. That's the goal. Same thing with the Mars one, right? But the extended rocket to it. So anyway, that's how we get our appreciation for the moon. So now we would say let's go into the note version, right? Goddard, and I'll even give you a second to just take a look at the setup this guy's got. Don't go right into the notes. I understand, right? Just look to the right of your screen and just see him stand there, right? And that crazy cage that he's built, and just for the first propulsion set, right? Explode using rocket propulsion to reach, 19, my apologies, I stand corrected. 1912 this began, but it really didn't take speed into the 20s, right? Prove that a rocket will work in a vacuum. This is a big one, that it needed no air to push it, right? Just that force, especially if you're moving, there's no friction in a vacuum. Think about what you can do. Shot a scientific payload in a rocket in 1929, so he was able to actually get height. Rocket fuel in 26. So you're going to fill in some of these notes. I'll give you a second. You can always kind of go back and you can pause me and write them in, whatever. Matter of fact, just for the sake of time, for my own sake, pause it and fill in the notes, all right? Patton developed pumps. This is one, developed pumps suitable for rocket fuels. That's what went bad on the launch pad with the wet test for the Artemis rocket. There was a pump malfunction. So what is this? Where was that one? Developed the apparatus of rocket. Where was the pump one? It doesn't give you the year, right? But early 1900s. We're still having some, and think about how complex it is compared to what this is. All right, that was Goddard. So that's when this started. Now he was one. Another one is this guy, and there is some. This one isn't even like what are those called nowadays? Everybody's conspiracy theory. I mean, I'm sure there is some deep conspiracy theory to it, but really it's not as much conspiracy theory as it is necessity, and not even forgiveness, because some things are, some crimes and are heinous, and even I was just following orders is never right, is never a reason. Well, Wernher von Braun was a German rocket scientist, so ahead of his time. Now, I know Goddard was also, but he followed Goddard. He's a student of Goddard. But this guy is look at the difference, right? And Goddard, we even went back, Goddard, however you want to say it. I say Goddard. Look at his machine, right? And this is a few years later, right? From the 30s, early 30s, and late 30s into the 40s. But it just was not. It was a few years too late to turn the tide of the war. So he was a German rocket scientist. He was taken into the war as a war scientist. And look here, oops, my apologies. I'm going to exit out. So I actually have him pulled up. Here. We'll do Wernher von Braun, the first one, right? Real American Genius. The microphone to the speaker. Humor me, I'll make it big. All right.
I am Dr. Wernher von Braun.
Forests are central to solving the two biggest crises of our time, biodiversity and climate. My organization spearheaded the protection of an area of rainforest almost half the size of Hong Kong.
Good for her.
German scientist, American citizen, and I helped develop the space race for the United States of America. I am most proud that I got the American people and the world to think outside of our planet, to dream larger, to go beyond the limits of what has been in the past, and to work hard to get there. I am an American genius, and I'm very proud so. However, blind ambition can be a curse to a genius. We can often be led astray. I could have taken more care of my workers in Germany. However, my blind ambition propelled me only to fulfill my dream of getting into space. Man must dream bigger. We can go farther than our imaginations will allow. I know it is possible. I've seen it. Sergei Korolev was a genius. He almost beat me. He beat me to space, but I put the man on the moon. Sergei Korolev definitely helped my mission to space. He gave my cause energy, fuel, and fire, and he helped the dream be realized. We needed the competition to fuel the fire and gain support from the peoples so that we may get to space peacefully and explore outside of our boundaries. technology we were developing was only in science fiction before. The thrusters and rockets we built to take us to space were beyond the imagination of mankind. I did not know who my competitor was in the Soviet Union until his death, and it was always a, how do you say in America, monkey on my back to know that he was beating me to the race. The United States of America won the space race. The people of the United States of America wanted to go to space, and we went there on our own volition. I think in the end, though, all of mankind benefited by our race, leaving our troubled wartime past behind.
I'd like to think that, right? I agree, but the troubled war past behind, I don't know about that part. You know, if you leave things behind, look what happens when we forget. You forget, you don't know your history, you repeat history. That's a thing. I'm not being preachy, it's just a fact. There's a little more about him, though, and I think this is a good one. It's 4.5 minutes, it's worth it. I think they're going to give us another commercial.
Let's just start with the uncomfortable fact that the American space program would not be what it is today if it weren't for the contributions of a scientist who was a former Nazi. Werner von Braun was an SS officer during World War II and led a team of German scientists in developing the world's first long-range ballistic missile, a military program aided in large part by slave labor at concentration camps. And yet, less than 2 decades later, von Braun was leading a team of NASA scientists in the design and development of the Saturn V rocket, the vehicle that ultimately propelled more than a dozen Apollo astronauts to the moon. Historians still debate whether he was an apolitical scientist who had no choice but to work for Hitler, or a cunning opportunist who knowingly made a deal with the devil to pursue his research. But what we do know is that he was a rocket science prodigy. Upon earning his PhD in physics in 1934 at the age of 22, he joined the German army as a civilian employee. Though younger than most of his colleagues, von Braun led the team that began developing a long-range ballistic missile. Borrowing heavily from the work of an American rocket scientist, Robert Goddard, von Braun's team built a rocket called the A4, later renamed the V2, or Vengeance weapon. The V2 was essentially a larger version of the liquid-fueled rockets built by Goddard, though von Braun made changes to the engines that dramatically increased their power. First, he used alcohol instead of gasoline as the main propellant, along with liquid oxygen. But the real power of his design came from 2 turbopumps, turbines that moved huge volumes of fuel into the combustion chamber at high speeds. These turbopumps could force 58 kilograms of alcohol and 72 kilograms of liquid oxygen into the combustion chamber every second, giving it a thrust of more than 25,000 kilograms, far more than Goddard had achieved. Using this technology, on October 3, 1942, von Braun's creation became the first man-made object to reach the threshold of space, flying to an altitude of 80 kilometers. The missile could travel more than 5,600 kilometers per hour and carry a 1,000-kilogram warhead. As military weapons go, the V2 was terrifying, but not always accurate. While the Germans launched 5,000 of the missiles toward Western Europe, only about 1,100 actually reached their targets. Still, the V2 was believed to have killed nearly 3,000 people. Now, there's at least some evidence to suggest that von Braun's sympathy for the Nazi cause only went so deep. For one thing, he was jailed briefly in 1944 after some Nazi spies infiltrated his program and began to suspect that he wasn't loyal enough. But more importantly for science, when the end of the war was in sight, von Braun was ordered to destroy all work related to the V2. But instead, he hid his documents in an abandoned mine and recovered them shortly before he and his team surrendered to the U.S. Army. As part of a carefully orchestrated mission known as Operation Paperclip, von Braun and his team were sent to the U.S., where he demonstrated his weapon to the U.S. Army in New Mexico. Later, he was transferred to Huntsville, Alabama, and eventually became director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. It was here that von Braun led the team that developed the Saturn V rocket, the most famous of all the rockets. While his V2 rocket was a pretty nifty piece of machinery, the Saturn V was truly revolutionary. 102 meters tall and at liftoff weighed more than a dozen 747s. And as the world witnessed during the Apollo missions, the Saturn V was not only incredibly powerful, it divided the work of spaceflight into an elegant 3-stage system. The first of its 3 expendable stages produced 3.4 million kilograms of thrust, making it 130 times more powerful than the V2. It had 5 separate F1 engines designed by von Braun's team so that the outer 4 engines could move move in order to control the direction of the rocket, while the center engine just provided more thrust. After lifting the whole thing to about 68 kilometers, the first stage would separate and the second stage would fire, carrying the spacecraft to the edge of orbit. Once there, the second stage would detach and a third stage pushed the craft into orbit and then toward the moon. Nearly half a century after they were first used, the 5 first-stage engines that were designed by von Braun's team are still the most powerful single-chamber liquid-fueled rockets ever made. As for von Braun, he went on to rise through the ranks of NASA and worked for aerospace companies, eventually being awarded the National Medal of Science not long before his death in 1977. But he never truly escaped his past. Whether you consider him a villain or a visionary or both, there's still no disputing his legacy. Von Braun turned the dreams of early 20th century rocket scientists into reality, and he did it in less than 3 decades. Thanks for watching this episode of SciShow Space. If you'd like...
Yes, sir. Your call. You know where we're at. You can't go back in time, and I'm sure there was tons of people that protested, even him winning the Medal of Science, awarding him something. It's always difficult to give to those that we feel may have had some sordid history. But let's move forward from this one. I had a Goddard thing about what the V2 looked like, but let's pass. Let's jump into. Hold on. All right, that is a picture of the V2, by the way. The guy in the movie who was playing von Braun, I'm an American Genius, was talking about his competition, Sergei Korolev, and he was the von Braun's contemporary. And actually, he said, I didn't know who he was until he died. It was a thing. Russia always behind the veil of secrecy. No one knew. Like, von Braun was a known American scientist / possible Nazi. Sergei Korolev had like a nickname. Like, they didn't even give him not until he passed on did they release this man's name, because they were afraid that either he would be assassinated by the Americans or blah 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 blah. Because remember, we're in now this is post World War II. We're in the space race now. This is a different way of competing between countries. But this Sergei Korolev did this Vostok rocket. Do I even have? Well, it launched a Sputnik. I do, so that's cool. Let's see. This is cool, actually. And you got to think about it. This is 1957.
On October the 4th, 1957, while the Americans were still finalizing their plans, Sputnik was launched.
Then its casing opened. The springs snapped, and the nose cone was pushed out of the way. A ball with 4 antennae emerged to go it alone in the darkness of space.
First satellite.
And a radio began to send a
1957.
signal back to Earth. Humanity had entered the space age.
So it's funny how you watch this and it was like, we'll get out of this, right? Sputnik 57, how von Braun was like, America eventually won the space race. In the end, we went to the moon, but all of those little steps prior to the moon, these initial ones, the Russians were absolutely on point. Right, the first man in space, this was a big one. Yuri Gagarin, April 12th, 61. 108-minute orbit's a real deal orbit. When we finally got a guy up in space, Alan Shepard, he didn't do an orbit. He went up a sub-Earth or suborbit and over Florida, took a look around and came back down. We kind of publicized it as a man in space victory. But it was a rush job because the Russians had done this in April. I think this wasn't pushed until May for the Americans, I think. Oh, my bad, wrong way. I think I even have this one. This is something worth watching, right? Yeah, this is Yuri Gagarin. Oh, and if we're doing, I'll go back to it. You're in it, by the way. This would have been like this is the bulk of the class lecture about the moon. So. Set volume to it. Oh, this is him. This is a crazy look, right? Real big. So that rocket ship, this Vostok rocket, eventually became the Soyuz rocket program. So let's see. I'm just looking at your notes. Responsible. We're seeing number 6, responsible for the Vostok program, VOSTOK. The Vostok eventually became the Soyuz, SOYUZ, Soyuz rocket, the 7, which is used today by the space agency.
12 апреля
Right, so this is
1951
Yuri
года
Gagarin going
в
up.
Советском Союзе выведен на орбиту вокруг Земли первый в мире космический корабль-спутник «Восток» с человеком на борту. Двухсторонняя радиосвязь.
Mission control.
Период выведения корабля-спутника «Восток» на орбиту космонавт товарищ Гагарин перенес удовлетворительно.
Through like a little periscope. And then those hard landings. What in the hell? Oh, the guy's a champion. All right. All right, and then all right, Soyuz, SOYUZ, yes, for 7. So this do I have the number 8, 1957. I'm just looking at your notes. Sputnik, first satellite in space. So you can pause, go back through those, right? For number 9, the first human, Gagarin. So this is a thing here. Let's just kind of go through this. So while Russians doing this, we're post World War II, and there's a series of these pilots. Now, I don't know if anybody has. I'm giving my age away, and I even found this movie not hard to tolerate. It was good, but it was long. It was like 3.5 or something hours, called The Right Stuff, and it was the history of NASA, like the Apollo programs, like the beginning. Actually, before it was the Apollo, it was like the Mercury, and then after the Mercury was the Gemini program, and then it went to the Apollo. They had to bring these crazy lunatic fighter pilots in from World War II and Korea, these jet pilot guys, and these guys were pretty intense, and they would really push the envelope. And they said, if we're going to have people be astronauts, right, the first astronauts, they have to be lunatics, so to speak. So these are the guys. These are pilots of the Korean War, where they were used to jet engines. And one of them, of these guys, Right Stuff guys, is Alan Shepard, and this is in '61. Same thing as Gagarin, but he did it a few months later. He went up to the moon, and I think his ship was called the Freedom 7, right? Do I even ask that? Flight. I just go for the names, right? Flew low Earth orbit. In '61, his flight lasted. It was just for Alan Shepard's flight didn't last long. Smokes. I'm gonna get back to you. I know it was not like the other guy. It was up over Florida and back. He didn't do the orbit. We'll get it. And I'm even gonna skip on the videos, because the videos are the same thing as Yuri Gagarin's, and they're just Shepard going up. Although, hold on. Context, no. These things will haunt me doing this, but let's do this one. 60 years. Yeah, right on. So these are the projects. 60 years and counting. This I like. 'Cause, I mean, you got to really think about it, right? Before I said these are the Right Stuff guys. So here's the Right Stuff guys, and these Right Stuff guys were part of Project Mercury. Those were the initial dudes that were chosen to get crazy, right? Just some of the names, right? You might. John Glenn was a big one. Alan Shepard, right? Gus Grissom. Unfortunately, Gus Grissom lost his life on Apollo 1, right? It's the one real heavy scar on the Apollo mission. Even Apollo 13, they managed to bring those guys back. Mercury Mission Control, right? The Gemini program. The Gemini program was getting guys, you can see, out in space, like not controlling space, but being able to maneuver out in space, being able to direct a craft, man-powered direction of a craft in space. So these were pretty big ones. This was guys exiting and doing the first spacewalk and going back in, only for short periods of time. And then there were ones where they had to do the rendezvous. I think I put that into the moon and back, right? That HBO one of the Mercury connections. John Glenn was trying to do a rendezvous between capsules, and he kind of lost control, and they started spinning. And anyway, so that was the Gemini program. The Gemini program was the Apollo program. Right, so lunar lander. Hey, moon, Earthrise. And the Apollo program, Apollo 13, right? That's a big one. I'll send you a quick clip of this. This is important. This square vent. This is a carbon monoxide vent that they actually made. They retrofitted what should be a round hole. This is almost that. How does a square peg fit in a round hole? I'll tell you how it does. You get a group of NASA engineers together that and have them troubleshoot the problem based on the lives of 3 astronauts. Their results hinge on that. So that's how you solve it. But I'll send the clip. Remember that. This was a really cool piece. Skylab was the initial International Space Station before it was anything. It was just a giant telescope / go up and visit and interact and do experiments up in space. And then here, the Soyuz Apollo project, where both Russia and the United States worked together. So now we're having a collaboration between the two superpowers, which is cool. Gratefully, we did that in the 70s, because that allowed us to have this partnership where we go up in the Soyuz ship. The space shuttle. The space shuttle was in the early, I think the first space shuttle mission was 1990. No, it couldn't have been, right? Because the Challenger, right here, Challenger's 86. What am I thinking? Let me put the first space shuttle mission in. Let's Google that while we're. I know. I should know this. I apologize. I'm human. 76. What? First shuttle, the Enterprise. $10 billion. But when did it launch? Did it launch? 81. Okay. All right. So I was off a decade. My apologies. So 80s. And of course, do I even have as a note? Human face. All right. So yeah, you're gonna have to kind of go back for this one. So, human NASA, human spaceflight. All right, let's do it. You got to go back. Project Mercury 1. Mercury astronauts, right? Gemini program 2. Apollo program 3. Skylab 4. Apollo Soyuz 5. Space Shuttle 6. I don't know why I put 10. Did I need 10? Well, that one. Space Station 7. Space Station 7. Hey, what's up here? Look at this guy, right? Scott Kelly. I remember it's his brother Mark Kelly is the congressman. Scott Kelly, 300th day in space. Remember, he did 340 days. Woohoo! Just surpassed Peggy Winston. She's pretty cool. She has a total of 665 days in space. There's actually a very good movie, One Strange Rock. Will Smith, unfortunately, the mad slapper, pre-slap. Get it together, man. Never with your hands. It's just so easy to respond with your hands. I know it's not a lecture. Just right. You have a heartfelt, witty, compassionate thing to say to the human being that's bothering you, or has hurt you, and then troubleshoot an answer. Peggy Whitson, she's pretty cool. 665 days, not in a row, but total. And they have a thing on her, One Strange Rock, where she does the whole show is dedicated to her because she's pretty amazing. I don't know what number I was on. Oh, maybe I'm a couple numbers short. I think that would be, was it 7 or 8? I mean, look, we can do if we're doing 9, 10, literally you can say SpaceX, is there. I believe me, we don't have to jam things in. I mean, do from 9, 8, 9, 10, whatever ones we left out. Really just say commercial space flight. Enter the age of commercial space flight. Really, that's the deal. All right, so let's go back to this. And then the Artemis program goal. Oh, I mean, look, how about this? Artemis phase 1. Then we did this in class. Artemis goal is to get humans back to the moon. Everybody should be comfortable. I might be although it's just a NASA site, so we're all in it. Get humans to the moon. Phase 1 is wet run. No. Yeah, because phase 1 is wet run. That's what's happening now. Phase 1 is coming up, right? This wet run was just the challenge. I'm sorry, I'm getting my head together. It was just the to make sure that they could fire the engines and do the data. Phase 1 is coming up in June. So phase 1, orbit the moon. Phase 2, orbit the moon with people. Phase 3, land on the moon. Right? Orbit the moon. Hopefully in June. Orbit the moon with people. I think the goal was in fall. We'll see how that goes. And then phase 3, take people back and land on the moon. That's in 2025, 26. All right, just why the moon, of course. Why not the moon? I got to be honest with you. I think it's great. They're going to create this whole lunar International Space Station, but a lunar base. Now, remember, the International Space Station is going to come to an end, I think, in 2030, right? They're going to crash it, which is insanity. Into that was that 0.0 place in the ocean. They're going to put this up in between the Earth and the moon. So it's a 200. Now, the International Space Station is 250 miles at max, 300 miles above the surface of the Earth. This guy is going to be between the moon and the Earth, closer towards the moon. That's 240,000 miles away. So that's real deal stuff. They'll go here. This will be a takeoff base. So from the Earth to this, from here to the moon, from here to Mars. So it'll be a great jump station, so to speak. Refueling, resupplying, all of that stuff. And then hold on. Let's just kind of go a little further, I think. And then here, this one, Artemis base camp. I kind of like this. I think that'll be, here's the lunar landing. That's before we get crazy with the big Elon Musk's Starship. This is going to be where we're going to go. I don't even need to really open it up anymore. All right, so that's cool. That's the Artemis program. How are we doing time wise? Let me take a look. 44. All right, let's take a pause because these are chunky videos, and I'm going to go kind of quick from here on in. Right, I don't have too much, so maybe another half an hour or so. All right, I'll give it a stop here, and then I'll upload this video.